It's longer time. Yay! Lager time. Poems, stories and thoughts. By me, Paul Cree. Who else? Greetings, bonjour, what's happening? My name is Paul Cree. Welcome to Lager Time. Legions of lager lights, grab your tins, your bottles and your pints. This is my little blog and podcast where I share bits of writing that I'm working on, be it stories, poems, music, and of course, these thought piece type essays written in response to quotes from the great book of meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So we've got there. Welcome to the last edition in this series where I've been writing, as I said, these pieces based on quotes from meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It's Saturday afternoon around lunchtime. I got back very late from London last night in rehearsals for the Love Scripted show, which I mentioned previously. By the time you hear this, I will be either on my way back from Bristol or back in London having done the show. So hopefully that all went well. And I'm back for like a day or two, and then my wife and I fly out to Greece for a little holiday to celebrate her birthday coming up. So yeah, it's all been a bit nuts, mate. Just loads of rehearsals and also trying to get this out. So I only recorded the previous edition earlier this week on Tuesday. Today's now Saturday, so I'm going to push this out to the end of the month. But listen, look, we've got there. I said I was going to do this sometime last year, where I started writing up all the quotes from meditations. Decided maybe, I don't know, about October, November, when I was finishing off the last season, that I was going to get stuck in and do this. And I have, and it's been an experience where I've learned a lot doing it. I hope I've got better at, I've certainly got better at producing it. Between Christmas and now, I built a little vocal booth. So I record this bit, the intros, I record it on a different mic, my kind of regular mic that I use when I'm doing like Zoom calls and all of that sort of stuff. But when I go and record the actual pieces, which takes a little bit longer, I go into the booth with a condenser mic. I take my time. I wind up doing bits and pieces sometimes 2 or 3 times, little bits and segments to make sure I try and get it right. And it's still not perfect. And then I go away and edit it, which also takes quite a long time, which I've made a lot of improvements on. I've done a little bit of like research into using the software Cubase that I use, and I've got better at using it. So the whole thing has been an exercise in, I don't know, just in like improving what I'm doing, seeing what I can write from the quotes. Has it improved my writing? I don't know. It's probably still all over the place. I would generally give myself a week to write each piece, which isn't that long. I don't work with editors, or as you can probably tell, I don't work with editors or anything like that. So I try and put some shape in it. I write it bits and pieces on the trains and where I can, and then once I've got something, piece it together, say roughly what I want to say, edit it, make as best I can, and stick it out. And there it goes. So I've done 12. I've got some thoughts and opinions out there that perhaps I would have been reluctant to share in the past. But when I set up this Substack thing coming on 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I said I wanted to explore other sides of things that I wouldn't normally talk about, things like politics, that kind of stuff, which I do think about a lot, and I read lots of articles and books and listen to podcasts on a regular basis. And now that I've talked about that stuff a bit, I'm probably going to strip that back a bit. Yeah, I was thinking just now, funnily enough, I wonder if I could get rid of a couple of podcasts and just listen to more football and philosophy and that, things that don't get me so wound up. But yeah, so there's been like a mental learning curve as well. Obviously reading meditations. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the actual piece. But I just want to say thank you to everyone that's listened or read or dipped in or dipped out or listened all the way through. Thank you. I really appreciate it. You know, this doesn't go out to tons of people, but I appreciate every single one that does. Some of the pieces have done quite well, some of them less so, but you know, it is what it is. I'm not gonna, I don't lose any sleep over it. I'm just glad that I've done it. And they exist out there, they're out there. It's a series of them after this, and there you go, where they'll sit there and maybe I'll do something with them, who knows. Been having some thoughts this week about some of the previous things I've done, how I can make use of those. But it's good, you're just creating stuff and creating more opportunities to keep this stuff going, really. And part of me doing Substack was I felt I wanted something to share all the bits that I was doing beyond writing pieces for spoken word gigs or theatre. I was writing lots of other little things, and it's been that certainly so far, and I'm enjoying it. It doesn't earn me any money really, but that's not why I'm doing it. Yeah, so I'm gonna keep going. I don't know how it's gonna work after today, because I'm certainly taking a break from it. But that's the problem. I always get ideas, and I'm going away for a bit, so no doubt I'll be just thinking about things I could be doing. And just this week, yeah, I was thinking about the young unprofessional stuff, what I can do with that, and I get excited. And go down rabbit holes like I did with this. And sometimes something comes out of it that becomes a thing. And this became a thing. This was just a little idea in my head. I wanted to make more use of the books that I was reading. And I thought, I could do this little series. Didn't really think about it beyond that, but there you go. Anyway. So yeah, there's no update really from what I mentioned on the last episode. I'll be off to Bristol on Tuesday to go do this show, so hopefully that went well. Come back with being in Birmingham in July, and then I'll be in Greece. Playoff finals not happened yet, but I guess when I come back from Greece, it's gearing towards England. Who knows what'll happen this summer. I'm excited, but I'm not like overexcited. You know, experience says to me that, you know, there's too many letdowns in the past, put it that way. And, you know, I think like I don't know enough about the other teams going into this tournament, to be honest, as well as I think this England squad is, and it's probably the best squad in my lifetime I think we've ever had. I don't know enough about the other squads. And where you get like teams, countries, nations like your Germanys and your Frances and your Italys and your Spains who've won these things previously and they know how to win them, I think there's something to be said for that. Like a mentality or a psychology. You know, you see Real Madrid going into the Champions League final this year. I think there is something in this idea about knowing how to be a winning team. And England don't know that. So, you know, it could end in tears. It could be like round 2 exit. Who knows? But I'm excited anyway. I hope you are. Maybe I'll write some football stuff. But that's it. Really. All right. So I keep getting the links wrong. when I'm trying to get people to support what I'm doing. So there's Ko-Fi, all right, where you can make little cash donations. Okay, so I did have it right last time. So Ko-Fi, if you go on to ko-fi.com/Paul Paulcree, one word, you can go in and make a little donation to what I'm doing. And I think it's like they use that buy me a coffee thing. But obviously I don't drink coffee and I drink lager, and I try to be witty with it. Oh yeah, buy me a lager, but it doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't really work. It's ko-fi.com/Paulcree if you want to make a cash donation. Subscribe on Substack. That's the best way, I think, to get this stuff, because you get the written pieces, and occasionally I'll put something else on there as well, just for Substack, and then it goes out to YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and all the other ones. And I've got work on Spotify and Apple, there's music, and there's a spoken word EP, and I have my old books, the Suburban, and I've got another book, Hip Hop Theatre Anthology, and you can get them from paulcree.co.uk/shop. And there are other numerous ways you can support this, but the main one being just listen and read and tell a mate if you think they might like it. But that's it. I'm going to go into the booth now, record the final piece, number 12 in this series, which I still haven't given the name for. Little thought pieces on the great book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I would recommend everyone has a copy of that in their house, like a Bible or whatever else, whatever religious text you got, or I don't know, like a flipping Jamie Oliver cookbook or whatever. I don't know. It's just useful to have around, and you can dip in and out of it whenever you want. I like it. I look at it most days. Grab a little quote here and there. It's a wonderful piece of writing, and it's really old, but it's banging. And there's so many things that are relevant to now. But okay, I hope you enjoy what will be June. Well, by the time you get this, or end of May, keep it lager than life. We're in lager. I mean, it's always lager season for me. By the way, I don't drink loads of lager as much as I like lager. I don't drink nearly as much as I probably want to, but I don't go crazy with it. It's more a state of mind. But I do like the lager. And I heard a worrying thing from my brother yesterday that a lager that I've taken to called Flinty, which is a Green King lager. So I don't know if that counts as a craft beer, but I've kind of let a lot of that stuff go. They ain't doing it anymore. Anyway, that's it. The other music's kicked in now. But anyway, keep it lager than life. Peas and taters. Enjoy the last piece. Paul. All that you pray to reach at some point in the circuit of your life can be yours now if you are generous to yourself. That is, if you leave all the past behind, entrust the future to providence, and direct the present solely to reverence and justice. To reverence, so that you come to love your given lot. It was nature that brought it to you, and you to it. To justice, so that you are open and direct in word and action, speaking the truth, observing law and proportion in all you do. You should let nothing stand in your way, not the iniquity of others, not what anyone else thinks or says, still less any cessation of this poor flesh that has accreted round you. The afflicted part must see to its own concern. If then, When you have finally come close to your exit, you have left all else behind and value only your directing mind and the divinity within you. If your fear is not that you will cease to live, but that you never started a life in accordance with nature, then you will be a man worthy of the universe that gave birth to you. You will no longer be a stranger in your own country, no longer meet the day's events as if bemused by the unexpected, no longer hanging on to this or that. Book 12, Passage 1. When I started writing this little project back last year, aside from writing the 12 pieces for each of the 12 books, I had no objective other than writing to get more out of the books I was reading. It just so happened that I started with this one, which, given the nature of what meditations is about, is a pretty nuts undertaking and probably naive on my part. As is often the case when I get a creative idea in my head, I get excited and just got stuck in. Like most things I've done in my life, it's been ill thought out, not very well planned and a bit chaotic. Sometimes though, good stuff comes out in the madness that might not have happened if I was better at planning. Had I been well versed in philosophical academic studies and the type of writing that looks at books like meditation, I doubt I ever would have started, for fear of getting it wrong somehow. Sometimes I think that about my own writing in general. Had I ever studied it as a craft beforehand, knowing me, I'd have probably got overwhelmed and sacked it off. As I read through Meditations the first time around, I highlighted quotes that I liked, then typed them up into a Word document as I went along. It was long. It took me months, but worth it. Then, for each piece, I went back through the quotes that I had written for that chapter, selected one that provoked the most thoughts and started typing. Sometimes I'd write down a few suggestions for things I could write about as the piece progressed. Most of the writing got done on train journeys between Maidstone and London. That's a good 30 to 40 minute chunk of mostly uninterrupted writing time. That's about the maximum time that my focus will allow for. Once I'd got it all down and tried to give it a bit of shape, I'd record it. With the quotes I selected, I haven't necessarily followed them per se. I've mainly just used them as a mental springboard to express a bunch of things that perhaps I could have said using other less revered prompts. This is what I chose though, and I stick by it. Underneath all the attempts at thought pieces from football to politics, I have been undertaking what I like to think is some deeper work. I'm starting to think that getting a lot of these thoughts out, many of which have been festering in my head for a long time, was probably a good idea in the long run. A bit of a mental clear out to get rid of what I don't need and hopefully make space for something better. Whether it's interesting or not, well, that's up to you. Letting all that stuff fester, as unformed or messy as it may be, wasn't doing me any good. By continuously going back to my document of quotes, I'm having to think about how I can actually apply some of these, and a lot of it is slowly starting to seep in. I draw from my quote file in my regular writing practice, which I do most days, consisting of what happened the day before and what could be improved, what did I learn, etc. A pretty standard stoic style journaling practice. I've been doing it for many years in various forms. I have a copy of the quotes document on my phone and on my laptop, and my copy of the book sits by my desk like a reliable and trusted pet dog. Maybe there is a better analogy I can use there, but I'm just happy that I've got it around me, like my dogs, except when they're barking whilst I'm trying to record. Something that I think is slowly unravelling for the better is my propensity for self-loathing. A few years ago, I headlined a spoken word gig in Birmingham. I was really excited about this one, not only because it was a trip out of London, but because my allocated set time was 40-something minutes, which was really rare for me. I was at a stage where I'd been performing regularly for a number of years and had amassed a pretty big body of work. A lot of my stuff back then was narrative poem type stories, so often the pieces were pretty long. The average set time for a headliner was normally about 20 minutes, so squeezing all the things I wanted to do was difficult. 40-something minutes meant I could finally flex my muscles a bit. Fast forward to the gig though, I did it and it went okay, but not great. Nowhere near as good as I wanted. When I was on stage doing my set, some of which I knew really well, having performed there multiple times, for some reason, I felt like something weren't right. Both me and the audience just weren't connecting with it. There can always be a number of reasons for this, chief one being that maybe I was just shit, or it's the venue, the day, the time, the weather, the crowd or whatever, but they're all externals. I weren't happy with what I did. On the train back to London, going over the set, it dawned on me that so much of it, nearly all of the pieces, 40-something minutes worth, were self-deprecating. I was quite meticulous about putting sets together, taking time to make sure there was variety in the themes, etc. So how on earth did I miss this one? I then started to question all of my work and soon realised so much of it was like this. There's a strange irony here, despite writing all these self-critical pieces, pulling off that sort of a set, I had to have been up inside my own arse, at least a little bit, or just unconsciously trying to present myself a certain way whilst neglecting the basics mechanics of what I was meant to be doing, putting on a show for an audience. Whilst it's hypocritical writing this, I'm doing it somewhat objectively. I imagine sitting through that set for the audience was probably pretty boring, or even mildly difficult at points, like being sat in the pub with that one guy who's really negative all the time. Even with the angle of humour, which I use a lot in my work, there's only so much light relief it can provide. Now I know writers, artists, comedians, etc. are all meant to be troubled and all that, but it's not always like that. I'm certainly someone who feels the blues, but I'm not always like that. It's not the only mind state I have, nor are those negative feelings the only things I feel. I realised I was doing a disservice to the audience, the promoter, and me. Sometimes I'm cheery. I'm cheery right now as I write this. Why haven't I been tapping into that? As difficult as it may be, it's worth a shot. There are good reasons why me and so many other people are like this propensity for self-loathing. But what I won't stand for anymore is just plainly accepting it, as if that's what I am. What I think I've fallen into is a habit probably formed over years and years of tapping into all this negative stuff and presenting this outwardly, which in turn reinforces the idea that this is what I should be doing. By talking and thinking that way, it's as if I'm trying to disarm the audience of any threat I might pose. Let's have it right, there is truth to a lot of it, all the feeling behind the work is real. I would have thought most artists probably feel the blues to a degree, but after all of this, I think I could start to make a concerted effort with what I'm focusing on and choose to explore other areas. I've mentioned before that I'm cynical about a lot of the self-help and kindness stuff out there, but like a lot of postmodernist social justice stuff, I think there are some things of value in it, worth taking from it. Whilst I'm not about to go out there and make some happy clappy stuff like those travelling Christian theatre companies that would occasionally come to my school and bounce around the stage, There are certain things I could make more of an effort to explore. Are they interesting? Who knows? What I do know is reading those quotes from meditations on an almost daily basis for the last 18 months, as well as other good stuff too, is helping me to reframe my perspective. It's been a long time coming, mate. Sometime last year, I was out walking my dogs, of course, going through the usual motions of screwing about this and that, getting myself worked up about things that I was imagining in my head. The same old routine. I remember I was by the railway bridge, which leads down to the River Medway in Maidstone. It suddenly occurred to me how lonely all these internal thought wars make me feel. It's like I've created this little fortress which I can routinely lock myself into so I can play out these scenarios in my head, despite it not doing me any good. Until recently, I'd never talked about this stuff because I'm sort of embarrassed about it. I also don't want to waste anyone's time with the inner laundry of my head, he says, writing this. Also, crucially, I didn't want to involve other people because this way of thinking was like my own little castle fortress, my own little party where I was the boss. All this caper has been somewhat of a comfort blanket, but in a very distorted way, like some sort of self-inflicted Stockholm syndrome. After I had the realization by the river, I had another little flashback to when I was a little kid. I don't know how old, maybe 8 or 9, but I was pretty young, and for whatever reason, not very happy. I remember being in my bed under my WWF duvet, closing my eyes, telling myself that each night, regardless of what was happening in real life, I could invent my own little world in my own head where life could be how I wanted it. I did that probably every night for years. I was the best at football, had the latest games console, could handle myself in fights, etc., respected on the playground, fancied by girls. Whatever mattered to me at the time. Over time, these fantasies evolved, in line with my growth into an adult. Nighttime became daytime, school time, work time, going to the pub time, walking the dogs time, then making excuses to find time so I could nosedive into these fantasies, often accompanied by music. Of course, there's nothing inherently wrong with imagining stuff, we all do it. Things get invented from the imagination, great ideas are spawned. The imagination is a powerful tool, if you know how to use it. It can be used for good, but it can go the other way too. At some point in those nighttime fantasies, the scenario started to become negative, nearly always someone screwing me over somehow. It became a toxic mental habit that I've indulged in for a very long time. Too long. The reasons why I think it's toxic is 1, that it's addictive, but 2, it requires me to tap into a lot of these negative feelings and indulge them. Stuff like inadequacy, resentment, loss, self-pity, and of course, self-loathing. In the end, I think it isolates me from real life and real people, and I wind up feeling miserable a lot of the time. Yet it's weirdly addictive. What I've figured out is that it's self-perpetuating. It's like punching yourself in the face, then getting angry about it after because you've been punched in the face. Then, once you simmer down, you punch yourself in the face again. During this last year, where I've gone down a rabbit hole and then discovered Stoic philosophy and in particular, meditations, it's allowed me to start to undo a lot of it. Work out little prevention and intervention strategies for when I find myself going in that direction. It's a slow process, but I think I'm better for it. It's helping me in my day-to-day relationships. It's made me realise just how much I find myself being on the defensive nearly all the time when talking to people. Conversations are so different when I'm not trying to preempt some sort of attack or feeling like I must project some image across about who I am just in case they don't know. All because of perceived externals reinforced by those internal imagined scenarios. The long and short of all of this is that I think all this meditation stuff has been worthwhile, personally. I've enjoyed the challenge of writing them and then recording, editing and producing the podcast, whilst maintaining consistency with it. Regardless of the content, it keeps me writing and recording. I've got much better at doing it, with plenty of areas to improve on. But that's what's good about this life caper. There's always tomorrow where you can regroup, reflect and have another crack at it and try and improve on what you're doing. Those stoic journals help with that. Well, I said back last year I was going to do it, and there's lots of things over the years that I said I was going to do, but I haven't. I've done this now. Large up everyone that has listened, read and supported it. I'm taking a break for a bit, but I'll be back. Especially now I've figured out how to use the bookmarks feature on Kindle, as well as the original method of highlighting with a book and a pen, which is super time consuming. But I've got 5 books worth of quotes from stuff I've been reading so far. That and the usual inclination for stories, poems and music, which is a flame that still burns brightly. That's enough from me for now, in more ways than one. But I promise it won't be so self-indulgent next time. Keep it larger than life. Paul.
It's longer time. Yay!
Lager Time. Poems, stories and thoughts. By me, Paul Cree. Who else?